everybody, and welcome to Monsters Lounge. I'm Jeni.
I'm Tressa. Hello, everybody.
It's so nice to be back live, Tressa.
Isn't it? Oh,
It
boy, did I
is.
miss this.
Did I ever miss this?
I wasn't sarcastic, Jeni. You don't have to be a rude person.
Well, the truth of the matter is.
Anyway.
Anyway, you know why I missed this? Because we didn't get to do this last week. Because
Yeah, I know. Yes,
we
I
were on
get
the
it.
road. Oh, you were there.
We were?
We were on the road, and it was so much fun.
What were we doing?
We went to the Oregon Bigfoot Festival and beyond.
That's right. That's
right.
Yeah.
The only sad part about that is that we don't have the commercial anymore. But I'm going to miss that commercial.
Me too.
But it was fantastic. And we got a impromptu interview with Ronnie LeBlanc, and that went out last week. And so that was amazing.
Yeah.
And hopefully he will come back so we can welcome him into the fancy lounge instead of just the cafeteria table.
Yeah. With the kids playing in the background. It's weird. It's fine.
Huge thanks to the organizers of the Bigfoot Fest. It was amazing. It was so well run and put together and just really, really cool. And Ronnie LeBlanc, obviously, Dave Schrader, who made that all happen for us, and James Shubsky, who we had on the show. Oh my gosh, what a fantastic person. Really.
Such a sweetheart. Devoted a full friggin' day to just giving us the tour of the paranormal places around the gorge.
Yeah.
All gorgeous. Lots of hikes. Too many hikes.
Lots of hikes. You loved the hikes.
It
was a lot of hikes,
that's
though.
Accurate.
There was a lot. We went to all sorts of stuff, and Tressa spent time in the woods, and we went to a cave, and we will have all the details of this and so many more facts right now. So listen, we flew in. Just kidding.
This morning, and they rent that Jeep. Boy, that Jeep was crazy.
That Jeep was so fun. We are going to have those interesting details and a bunch of history about the area, and us talking about how much fun we had and what great spelunkers we are. The best ever. And we're going to have that in a future episode, so stay tuned, and we will definitely get that out there. But tonight, this is just coming up, just coming up to be my month. We're doing so many cryptid things. It's great.
And you're so excited. You're so cute.
I love it so much. I love it. Shut up. It's so great.
You're adorable, is all I'm saying.
Oh, so are you. Let's just talk about that.
Okay.
All right.
Also, you have pretty hair.
Oh, you.
No.
Jeez. Yeah.
Okay. Do we have a guest tonight?
We do have a guest tonight, and we're very excited about this guest because we're going to be talking about Chupacabra and Dogmen, which I still can't quite wrap my head around. We've talked about it a little before, something very interesting. Anyway, so we learned about Aaron because of some pretty cool documentaries and his books done by Small Town Monsters, one of which, obviously, the Chupacabra really intrigued me. We asked him to come on the show, and it's so great because there's a brand new documentary out that just came out today, and he's going to talk about that, and that is called Dogman Territory, and that is based on one of his books, Hunting Grounds, Dogmen of the Lakes. So we're going to hear a little bit about that. He is a San Antonio, Texas-based author and researcher and the former editor-in-chief of Paranormality magazine. When he's not chasing werewolves, he enjoys books, cartoons, video games, podcasting, and nunchucks.
Who doesn't?
I mean, me, because I would smack myself very quickly in the face.
That's why I love them. They're very entertaining to watch people use.
You know what? I'm going to get some, and I'm going to use them, and you're going to think it's entertaining until I knock myself out, and then it's not going to be funny anymore.
It's going to be a little funny.
It's going to be a little funny. He lives with his wife, Sarah, with whom he hosts the podcast, Hey Strangeness, and his son, along with way too many cats, Near the Alamo. You can follow his exploits on Instagram, and we will have all of that information for you in the show notes later. So please help me welcome Aaron Deese.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
instead of saying thank you with
Say that was
that.
a lot and I didn't get all of it, but I'm excited either way. I'm really excited to hang out with you guys. So,
Are you still sure
oh
about that?
yeah,
Because
oh
We'll
yeah.
find out. We'll figure
How
it out.
bad could it be, right? How
we'll
bad
get
could it
there.
get?
Oh, is that a dare?
I think that sounds like a
Let's
Maybe.
challenge.
go!
Let's do it. Tuesday night. What is it? Tuesday? Let's go.
Tuesday night fights. That's a thing, right?
Boy, we're off to
Is
a
now.
bang.
Don't even know what we're fighting about.
But
Neither
you
do
know what you
I. I
did.
never do. All right, so
Yes,
Chupacabra. We're gonna start
let's do
off
it.
right there. Listen, now I was watching this documentary and I had this wild thought because so we get this idea of this very, very supernatural sort of cryptid with glowing red eyes and like spikes and sucking the blood of goats and doing all of that stuff.
Like you do. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
like
yeah.
one does. But then there's also, it seems to be kind of a theory that that's not really the case, that maybe it's a lost sort of canid species.
So this is where the chupacabra gets really, really confusing for people, including me. And when I first kind of got back into the paranormal as a sort of full-time hobby a couple years ago, this was something that really put a bee in my bonnet, because the name chupacabra is Spanish for goat sucker. That is what it translates to. That name comes from
Right.
Puerto Rico, which is where the initial rash of sightings took place, wherein the creature you described that has the glowing eyes and the alien appearance and the spikes and sometimes wings, depending on the story in question, that's where that comes from. Jump forward to the early 2000s, late 1990s, and we start getting these reports out of Southwest Texas about these really weird looking canine things that are, they have some hair but it's really spiky, they look mangy but they're too big, their teeth are very exaggerated. These things are actually caught on camera, they're shown on CNN. In the early days of viral internet video, these things were popping up on websites like, I don't know, I'm trying to remember old viral sites before YouTube, but that's where this kind of got started. It very much became an internet legend. And at some point, very quickly in the interim there, the name Chupacabra was taken from this very distinct Puerto Rican monster and put on this very different Texas monster. And the reason for that is that both creatures were said to predate upon and drink the blood of livestock, chickens, goats, etc. So behaviorally, that moniker kind of makes sense. Its appearance and everything else, to me, that makes no sense at all. So the alternate name Texas Terror Dog came up a few years ago. Um,
I like that better.
yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah,
do
I was
too.
involved in that. My friends Joss and Monique Rose over at Fright Life Paranormal came up with that. And when I was with the magazine, that was something that we talked about. Now it's not really, I don't want to say I don't care about it anymore, but it's like, okay, call it the chupacabra if you want, because people are always going to do that. It's inseparable now. But Lauren Coleman, in an interview with National Geographic, I want to say in 2009, 10, I could be mistaken on the year, said that we kind of, I'm going to paraphrase and misquote, but kind of said we missed an opportunity with the Texas version, if you like, to maybe classify a new cryptid. Because with the Texas version, we have taxidermied specimens, we have DNA analysis. We don't have that for this wild thing in Puerto Rico. So, you know,
No, that's interesting. And first of all, like Texas Terror Dogs is amazing. Like I'm seeing a whole line of merch. I'm very excited
mm-hmm.
about this.
Absolutely.
Like,
Stuffies.
yeah, going down. So like when I was listening to that and listening about like this different thing that's not actually a super chupacabra, but kind of is, it made me think about like sort of relic species, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the Tasmanian tiger,
Mm-hmm.
right? Things like that. And could there possibly be just this sort of species that wasn't out? Has there been any sort of historical record of anything like that out of Texas? Like, is it we're dealing with something
That's
like
an
that?
interesting question. That's actually something I ran into in my first book. There's a very nice lady named Christina Downs, who's with the Texas Folklore Society and Tarleton University in Stephenville, Texas. And she has done extensive research on this stuff. She's the head of the Texas Folklore Society. And she told me that, we started hearing the name Chupacabra in the 90s and the early 2000s. But if you talk to old timers in Texas, some of these old ranchers, farmers, they've been seeing these things for generations. This is not a new thing. And essentially what we're looking at there, excuse me, is some kind of a canine breed, a hybrid, some kind of intermixing of different species and breeds, because we know that some Texas Chupacabra, based on the DNA analysis, have coyote DNA, Mexican red wolves, and domestic dogs, all kind of intermixed in there together. Wolves aren't supposed to be in Texas. They're not supposed to be. We wiped them out a long time ago, just like we did in a lot of other parts of the world, because we determined that they were dangerous. But we've kind of seen them coming back in the last few years. There's another mixed species of canine that's been popping up around Galveston for the last couple decades, which I kind of tacitly refer to as the Galveston wolves. But they are also a mix of Mexican red wolves and domestic dogs. So with the Chupacabra, the Texas version, the Texas Terror Dog, we have a bona fide cryptid, essentially. We have this new mix that we've never really seen before, doing these very awful things, and they look terrible. Like, if you look up Texas Chupacabra taxidermy, it's awful. It's something out of a nightmare. But that's what this lady shot on her property, and that's what was taxidermied, and now you can go and see it. People like Lyle Blackburn, Ken Gerhard have written on it extensively. And if you look into the research they've done, this is some kind of a mix of canines that we did not expect.
Yeah, I hadn't really realized that. Like, the thing is, I mean, I remember when those photos like first started coming out, and the thing just, you feel a little sad when you're looking at it, because it does not look like a healthy creature.
What hath God wrought? Indeed.
Yeah. It does not look real good.
So it sounds like it's just a hybrid with mange.
Essentially, they sarcoptic mange is kind of a running trait with these things. My wife, who's a veterinary technician, her and I produced a podcast on this very topic, the differences between the two Chupacabras, back before I was with Small Town Monsters and kind of doing my own thing. And when we were looking at photos and stuff, immediately she's like, "That thing has mange. That's a dog with mange." She's like, this part's weird, this part's weird, this part's weird. Those are inflamed anal glands. This is that. So, even people who with very close adjacency to animals look at this and go, yeah, I see that, but that's still pretty weird. Yeah.
Can you tell us more about the inflamed anal glands?
Can we avoid that?
It's a phrase I hear a lot when I'm like, "How was your day, sweetheart?" It's a phrase, and she'll tell me stories that I dare not repeat. But yeah, the veterinary technician, they're the true heroes of cryptozoology.
Yes.
Oh, seriously.
Yeah, okay, so real. I'm learning about the Texas Terror Dog for the first time right now, because the Chupacabra in my head was always just like, okay, let's all settle down. Some lady saw a movie and she's describing the villain from that movie.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you got to that. You've done your homework. Yeah. Madeline Tolentino, who is the person who first reported the Chupacabra, the first sighting that we kind of get that atypical description from. She later went on record, spoke to a journalist and said, "Yeah, I had just seen the movie Species. And I think what I saw, I think maybe I was imagining it." But the problem with that, and that's when we get into questions of mass hysteria or tulpas or paranormal entities, because the problem with just saying, "Oh, well, Madeline saw a movie and imagined this," she wasn't the only one to report it. There were other independent witnesses, including law enforcement personnel, journalists who saw this thing. There's a very, very good episode of Unsolved Mysteries from 1996, 97, right around the time this was all going on. So it speaks about it very currently. Great episode, where they interviewed different witnesses who were like, "Yeah, I saw this thing too." And one of them was I think it was a police officer, if I remember correctly. But long story short, she was not the only one to report seeing it. So that's where it gets funky.
Okay.
But I'm with you. I'm with you. No, I'm with you. Yeah. It's one of those that even as somebody who's into this stuff, I look at it and I'm like, really, guys? Really? All right, let's see what we got.
Yeah, no, that's my only real listen, I love this crap. It's the best. But when she comes out later and is like, "Oh yeah, I just watched Species," I was like, okay, I don't want to hear about the Chupacabra ever again then.
Yeah.
Just everybody shush. But knowing, I didn't realize that cops had seen this and there were other witnesses. So I concede.
Yeah.
That was a very graceful concession.
Thank you. I'm really good at this.
You are very good at this. Yeah.
Well, and the fact of the matter is the Chupacabra is a cryptid that was, around and has been around for a very long time in legend and folklore, just maybe not here.
Yeah. The idea of a vampiric monster is not new. We see it from all over the place.
No.
So then we get into other questions like, are vampires real? And I don't know. I don't have thoughts on that. But we know some kind of
I'm glad you brought it up then.
I'll let you guys take it from here. But no, we know some kind of chupacabra is real, even if we're just talking about the Texas version, in air quotes. So
Well, I like it, and I like the idea of terror dogs. Although I'm gonna need them to work on some sort of cure for that mange.
yeah.
Not the Chupies, but
Yeah.
Oh, you want them in little lab coats?
I kind of really do want them in little lab coats.
Beakers.
Little Bunsen
Worth a
burners. They're gonna be so good. They're gonna conquer the world. So moving on from one canine-like cryptid to another.
Jeni, nice segue.
Well, thank you. I worked on that just now. I wrote it out with my Bunsen burner and my beakers.
It's not that good then. I thought it was just
it's not.
Cool.
It's really not. Dogmen.
Yes, Dogmen.
Specifically, now we hear a fair amount because of the Dogmen of Michigan, right? But they're very prevalent in sightings more southern as well, right?
We're noticing that there is a heavy concentration in Texas, which is what I wrote my first book on, the Texas Dogman Triangle. I think I have a map behind me here. Yeah, there's a map.
Oh, nice.
Made by my good friend Jonathan Dog.
That's a huge triangle.
It's very big, yeah. And it's a weird thing, because when I came up with that term, I was looking at 3 sightings that were kind of concentrated in the area that I was living at the time. And I was like, oh, here's a triangle, cool. And then the more I started to look into it, it's like, well, here's a huge concentration around Dallas, and here's a huge concentration around San Antonio, and here's the same situation in Houston. Now this triangle is much, much bigger, but like the name still applied. So that was weird. But to answer your question, yeah, we're seeing more sightings kind of being mentioned and talked about in more southern areas. And it's the phenomenon, at least the upright canine motif, has been talked about in places like Louisiana for a long time, because we have the Rougarou down there. That's a distinctly different legend from Dogman is a cryptid. That's kind of a separate thing. But we're still seeing these people who will say, yeah, I've seen a wolf that walked on 2 legs in a place where there aren't even supposed to be wolves.
From my understanding of it, which is incredibly limited, you have your kind of big 3, right? You have the werewolf and the Rougarou and the Dogman, but the werewolf and the Rougarou are they more like in the shape-shifting sort of like one thing turns into another, and the Dogman is just kind of a Dogman all the time?
That's kind of the running idea that a lot of people seem to have. The difficulty when you get into trying to separate werewolf from Dogman is that what is a werewolf? We think of it as a shapeshifter, as a wizard, warlock, witch, something like that. But most of what we think of as a werewolf when we're talking about that comes from Hollywood, comes from pop culture. But then we go back a little further and we find out those Hollywood movies were inspired by real world legends and stories written down by people who genuinely believed that people could turn into animals. Wolves are just one. If you jump around the world, we've got jaguars in South America. We've got I think jaguars again in Asia, like they're all over the place, this idea of shape shifting. But then they intersect with this idea of an upright canine, which visually is represented as far back as ancient Mesopotamia. It pops up again in Greece. It pops up again in Norse mythology. It's all over the place. Scotland, we have the wolver over there. And then you get to North America in the modern day, and people are reporting seeing these things in the trees or on their ranch lands or in national parks and camping grounds. So then we have to start asking, okay, well, are these sightings, are these the same thing that people have been talking about for generations? Or is this some kind of a canine offshoot that results from wolves and dogs mixing in a super specific way, like the Chupacabra? So I'm glad we started there. And
that makes them walk upright on 2 legs?
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't make sense. Zoologically, it does not make sense. There are very, very few reasons for a canine, any quadrupedal animal, but for a canine to walk on 2 legs doesn't make sense. We know it's possible. We know that canines can adapt to bipedal locomotion. Usually
True.
Everyone's been to the dog circus,
Exactly. We
yes.
see it. The problem is we don't see it in the wild, at least not very often. 2 years ago, we had a case out of England of a fox that showed up in someone's yard, was captured on video. You can go look at it right now, walking on its front legs. Now, it didn't have hind legs, so it was injured, it was deformed or something like that. It was compensating for an injury or an illness. But it
Sure.
proves that a canine can adapt to that kind of locomotion in the wild without human intervention. So it doesn't prove that Dogman is a biological cryptid. There are many, many arguments against that, but at least it could be possible. So then it gets really hard because a lot of these encounters, while they are very much these sightings of cryptids, I saw it in the trees, I saw it by the roadside, it killed one of my dogs. 50% or more of them bleed into the very like supernatural, spectral, strange realm where you're running into stuff that eyewitnesses are reporting and experiencing that you don't experience when you just see a weird dog.
Such as what are we talking about? Weird
we can
stuff.
talk about one of the cases in Dogman territory, the new film specifically. A gentleman named Martin Groves. He's a former law enforcement officer, 30-year career, well known in his community, well respected. His reputation and his background are not in question. This isn't one of those witnesses. It's like, well, he said he was in the army, but we're not really sure. No, we know who this guy is.
He saw a movie last week, and he's pretty sure.
Yeah, he's not one of those guys. Martin is interesting. In addition to being just a very kind and gracious man, I hope he's watching right now. He did not come forward with his story seeking attention. Heather Mosier kind of found him by looking at comments on comments on comments in a very deeply buried Reddit thread during the production of American Werewolves 1. And that was when he came forward with his story initially. And we were like, oh my God, this gentleman is a dream witness, not seeking attention, has all this information, verifiable background, also a really nice guy and a pleasure to work with. Dream witness all around. So, but one of Martin's encounters, he experienced immediate symptoms of like nausea, disorientation, physical illness, like he had been exposed to some kind of a chemical weapon. And again, as a law enforcement officer, he can make that comparison. He's been exposed to chemical weapons as a part of his training, pepper spray and stuff like that. He had a second witness with him, a gentleman named Daryl Denton, who's a former politician, also very well known in his community, who experienced the exact same thing. They experienced what we sometimes hear referred to in the Bigfoot community as mind speak, these impressions of certain intent, or maybe not necessarily words, but impressions or feelings. And both gentlemen experienced these overwhelming feelings of dread, anxiety, panic, disorientation. And these are seasoned hunters. These are gentlemen who know how to use firearms, who have been in dangerous situations, who have been in the woods their entire lives, and they have this very visceral response that, if you think about it, it kind of equates to like an overwhelming panic attack, just at catching sight of this thing out of the side. What's interesting is they started experiencing these symptoms before they even saw this thing, before they even caught sight of it.
Is there any infrasound is the first thing that popped into my head. Again, you mentioned like the Bigfoot thing that is well reported with Bigfoot sightings.
That comes up a lot. It's as conjecture, as a question. Of course we don't know, but people like Jesse and Joe Doyle, who also appear in this film, my good friends over at Hellbent Holler, they have started doing experiments with detecting and picking up infrasound in some of these high strangeness areas. And we're still very early in the days where you can do that. They actually found an engineer and paid and commissioned to have this custom device built. So fun little fact about them.
Oh, I like that a lot.
Yeah, me too.
Cool guys, Hellbent Holler. Yeah. They made this book possible for sure. But that's one of those things that we just don't have enough data. And that's kind of where we're at with the Dogman phenomenon in general, like we are with a lot of cryptids. But people have been talking about Bigfoot in the mainstream coming up on 100 years now. We've gathered a lot of anecdotes and data, and we have a lot of ideas that we can reasonably make a scientific argument for. We've only really been talking about Dogman as a cryptid in the modern sense really since Linda Godfrey wrote her books, Beast of Bray Road, and then going from there. That's we're kind of early. If Bigfoot research is in its infancy, which is what I've heard a member of the Olympic Project say, can't remember who right now, Dogman research, mom and dad are on the second date. Like we're very early on. So we need more anecdotes. We need more stories. I'm sorry, that might be crass.
This is a family program.
Mom and dad just met. I'm sorry, there's no good way to do that.
There we go. Thank you.
Okay. They're courting. They're not dating. We're just very early on, and even since my first book came out, I've had other people reach out to me in Texas that are like, hey, I saw this thing when I was very young. I didn't know this was a thing until I saw your documentary, because that book also has a documentary companion directed by Seth Breedlove. So that's interesting to me because we're getting more reports, we're getting more information. And what's cool is that these reports very often correlate with or seem to back one another up. What Martin experienced is not unique. We hear this very often with Dogman reports, these feelings of panic and disorientation. Physical descriptors, the upright stance, obviously, but pointed ears, glowing eyes comes up a lot. Those are recurring. Those come up again and again. So we're seeing cases that, while not every case is the same, there are overlapping patterns that we find in Michigan, Ohio, the Carolinas. I'm hearing stuff out of Florida now, Louisiana, Texas, the land between the lakes, of course.
Yeah, that's wild to me. What about like areas of, because you'll get a lot of cryptid sightings sometimes around like national parks. That's one of my favorite things in the whole wide world is national parks and like all the weirdness that happens in and around those areas, right? Are there reports coming out of there, or is it not so much?
Seems to be, yeah. In Texas specifically, we see them a lot in natural preserves, campgrounds, state parks, areas like that. Quite a few state park encounters in Texas. The land between the lakes, of course, is the largest inland peninsula in the United States. It's a national recreation area. We see them all over there. Ohio has quite a few sightings you're seeing them online. There are some reported ones. The Defiance werewolf is a fun one out of Ohio. There are 75 state parks in Ohio. So there's definitely some correlation and overlap there. Yeah.
Too many. Let's hear more about state parks. I'm sorry, federal parks. What are they called? I don't care. Let's go.
There's different ones I'm learning, actually. There's state. There's.
All right.
Are you troubled by strange noises in the middle of the night? Do you experience feelings of dread in your basement or attic? Have you or your family ever seen a spook, spectre, or ghost? Then Haunted Magazine issue 41 might just be for you. In issue 41 we have The Enfield Haunting, an interview with Dave Schrader, Danny Robbins, and lots more. Out now in stores, app stores, and online at bit.ly/Haunted Magazine. Remember, don't be normal. Be paranormal.
Tressa, you know very well that there are national parks, national monuments, national forests. You were in like 2 of them a week ago.
I don't know. I was not paying attention. I was just trying not to trip the whole time. I'm a clumsy lady.
A lot of opportunities for that out there. Yeah. In the wilderness.
There's no handrails. What am I supposed to do?
But you brought your own handrail.
I know, weird. It was inconvenient, so I left it in the car.
It was very inconvenient. I don't know why you had that.
Because I'm a clumsy lady. Jesus.
And we've come full circle.
All right, sorry.
Anyway.
That ad, how rude was that ad for interrupting us?
I don't know, but I might have to pick up an issue of 41 of Haunted Magazine featuring Dave Schrader.
I think I've picked up one every single time we've seen the commercial, so I've got a lot of them.
I've got so many.
Support print media.
So Dogmen in the rest of the world, what about that?
That's fun too, because it is. I'm beginning to feel that it is not a distinctly American phenomenon. We have the Nagual in South America, Mesoamerican lore, which is a shape-shifting warrior or shaman, depending on which culture, because they were present with the Incas and the Mayas and the Aztecs. Depending on who we're looking at and what tribe, they were interpreted or regarded in different ways, but they were said to be able to take on the form of animals. Jaguars come up a lot. One name they're referred to by sometimes is the Jaguar Men, but they could turn into snakes, balls of fire, and wolves. So that's fun. There's, of course, the European.
That's very
right? It's fun. Turn into fire, then a wolf. Halloween costume for the rest of your life.
Thank you. Who doesn't want to turn into fire?
You guys want to?
I'm cold.
You guys want to see? That's the ultimate hold my beer. Right? See something cool. But of course, we have the European werewolf legends from the Middle Ages. We have them in Germany. We have the berserkers of Norse mythology, who we know were, human warriors that put on animal skins. But part of that putting on of those animal skins was taking on the persona of this creature and trying to embody it and become a more fearsome warrior, So again, this idea of becoming an animal has been consistent with us for a really, really, really long time. But sorry, the short answer is that it's not limited to North America. We see similar legends all over the world. I've had a couple people email me recently about reports out of Australia, modern encounters in Scotland, Wolver territory. So, yeah.
Interesting.
Could this be at all related to, say, a word I shouldn't be saying that is involved at the ranch?
She's talking about skinwalkers.
For sure.
Yeah,
that's
that
a part
one.
of it. And that's actually something we've covered over at Small Town Monsters here, I have it. The Skinwalkers, American Werewolves too.
Do you just have everything like Velcro to your wall?
Yeah, I kind of rotate things out. I work with a limited amount of space here, so I rotate things depending on what's on my mind. But I've been talking a lot of werewolves lately.
This is fantastic.
So, yeah, no, great film.
We can't relate. We're in a lush mansion right now.
No, you guys are.
We can't Velcro things. We just have our portraits all over the place.
Well, it would sully the something in Victorian speech about the paint, Yeah.
Exactly.
But that's one of those questions is, are these reports, because in the land between the lakes, we're getting all these modern and mid-century reports of upright walking canines. Well, that was Native American land before European settlers showed up in the mid-1700s. What's interesting about that is that according to the Land Between the Lakes official website, there were no Native American tribes that had permanently settled in that area. It was a shared hunting ground, which I actually did not know when I came up with the name for the book. So that was a fun thing to learn. But that was one of the questions. Why didn't they settle there? And then, of course, in some tribes, we do have the Skinwalker legend, which is specific to some tribes. And I'm always really careful with that because there can be a tendency on the part of some, researchers of Anglo descent, I'm speaking for myself here, to just take something and go, well, this is just a Native American legend, and that makes it true.
Right.
Okay, what tribes is it coming from? Who of Native descent is telling you this story? What's your source that's not on the internet? That's where we have to be really, really careful. But it is factual that we do have that, again, upright canine motif, that idea of taking on the form or spirit of an animal present with Native American tribes long before my white ancestors showed up here. And it was fun actually researching this book. I found out I had distant ancestors that lived in the land between the lakes back in the 1700s. So that was a cool little thing.
Rude. I just can't
into a bucket for a couple hours, but yeah. So it's. I guess that's a cop-out way of saying I don't know. There's common visual motifs, but when we're talking about Native culture, I'm so hesitant to paint with too broad of a brush. Yeah,
absolutely. That's totally respectful and makes perfect sense.
Yeah. I feel like you can't really speak on that unless you've spoken to and gotten eyewitness reports from someone of that descent.
Yeah. And that's part of the reason I referenced American Werewolves too a moment ago, is that we were I wasn't involved in that production, but we were able to interview several persons of Native descent who were able to speak about it on a firsthand basis. So it's a good research material. I don't make money if you watch it. It's just a good movie.
Well, even if you did make money, I mean, it can still be a good
it's still good.
It'll still be a good movie. It's not gonna be bad. Yeah, and the commonality that just was occurring to me just in hearing your stories is that sense of dread, right? And that sort of, because that's not always present when you hear about other cryptid sightings. There's not like a malevolence or like a danger sort of feel.
Yeah.
Is that fairly common with the Dogmen? Because I mean, just in like you said, like movie culture, etc. Like you think about the werewolf, and you're not feeling excited about running into one.
Yeah.
Right. So is that a common theme in your research?
It very much is. And it's kind of the thing that sets these apart from being able to say, oh, well, it's just a Sasquatch sighting. It was just a Sasquatch with pointy ears. Which, we don't even know exactly what Sasquatch is. Never mind well enough to assume that there's a version with pointy ears. But anyway,
seems a little off.
I mean, baboons are primates, and if Sasquatch is a primate, that's a whole thing. I get it. But sorry, I shouldn't have gone down the Bigfoot road. But yeah, okay, no, I got it again.
No, you should not have. And it would be nice if you
I
respectfully
apologize.
left.
I'll see
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
myself
I'm
out.
just kidding. I'm just kidding.
No, that's really what sets these things apart, is that we do hear Bigfoot encounters that are frightening, that are intimidating. The Ape Canyon story, the rock throwing, we hear stories about them banging on windows and chasing people sometimes. We do hear those reports. But even if 50% of Bigfoot reports are like that, it's still not close to the majority that we see in Dogman encounters. And that's without having numbers in front of me. Can't do numbers because there's more coming in all the time. We just don't know yet. But even some of these roadside sightings, the sighting that kind of got me on this whole Dogman track to begin with was from someone I know and trust very personally. It's a member of my family. They appear on the phone in the Dogman Triangle documentary under an assumed name because they're not interested in putting their identity out there. But they saw one of these things, and even seeing it from a vehicle, for a few seconds, they felt like that's something I need to get away from. That's something I should not be near. And this is, again, military veteran, trained in the use of firearms, served in Afghanistan, not somebody who rattles easily, not somebody who gets shaken up over nothing. So, but yes is the short answer. I'm rambling tonight. That is a common pattern in these sightings.
Which also kind of goes against the grain. Like, I mean, yes, running into a wild wolf in the wild, a wild wolf in the wild. That's where you run into those.
No, they could come in your house. You never know.
You sit and make you coffee with beakers and. Yeah, just kidding.
They're not chupacabras.
Yeah, seriously. They're not like that terrifying. It's like, oh, there's a wolf. Like, maybe just be careful. But you don't get that feeling of dread. At least not your average person does. You see a coyote or something like that. It's not immediate fear. So it's not like a predator sort of scenario. So the Dogman vibe seems to be even different from what you would get if it were a wolf.
Exactly. Yeah. There seems to be something that supersedes the idea of just a dangerous animal, just a big animal. Because if you say, if you've ever been to the zoo and you've been to one of those gorilla enclosures where they have the 6-inch thick glass and you can walk right up to the gorilla, that's really weird. That takes a second for your brain to go, wow, this is a real gorilla, not a picture on my phone or on National Geographic. Wow. So I can understand how someone would have not just a fear response, but something that kind of plays with your perspective a little bit when you see something like this right in front of you. But what I didn't experience when I saw a gorilla at the zoo, and that's a false equivocation, I know, but people are coming away from these things saying, I'm scared to go in the woods now. And I've been going in the woods my entire life. I have nightmares. I have symptoms that are very closely resembling PTSD. That doesn't come from seeing an animal, just an animal.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've talked to a lot of people who have seen a lot of things, and there is a certain reconciliation that they all talk about doing, having some sort of trauma response or having the perspective shift. But very rarely is it so shocking and violent that it causes a reaction like that, just in the people that we've talked to, and that's sort of across the board paranormal.
Especially if it precedes the actual scene of the cryptid. That's a whole nother level. That's like, if you can feel it before you see it and have no idea that you're about to see it, that's intense.
Yeah.
And very different.
Yeah. That's not just a big dog skulking around in the bushes. Yeah. And it's one of those things like you hear, again, with Bigfoot. I hate to keep making that comparison, but you hear about, the woods went silent before I saw this thing. Like, my dog freaked out. We have a few stories that involve domestic dogs being on the scene at the time. And there's one case in particular out of Texas where they were said to have actually been attacked. But you hear of dogs just freaking out, either being very afraid or going into like fight mode immediately.
Which also does lend itself to that idea that it's along the lines of like a skinwalker or something, malevolent magic going on there.
Or just paranormal. It doesn't all have to be stupid and scientific. It can be fun and paranormal.
It can.
Come on, you guys.
Well, it sounds like scary fun and paranormal.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's a very fun topic. I get to write about werewolves every day. That's cool.
That's very cool.
But it's confounding.
Well, and I think that there's definitely a certain allure too, right? With things that have been passed down so far through history. It's not just a modern invention of people getting creative or fantastical with things.
Yeah. because that's kind of the easy dismissal of this, and that's where I was when I first heard the term Dogman. I clicked to the next video. I went to the next podcast episode. Like I was not interested at all because I was like, "Come on, guys, Bigfoot's interesting enough. We don't need to make up werewolves." But then I read the Beast of Bray Road by Linda Godfrey on a lark, and then I watched the Bray Road Beast, also from Small Town Monsters. This was well before I worked for them, and I was like, "Wow." Okay, so whether or not I believe in this thing, there are people who genuinely will sit you down and look you in the eye and go, I saw what looks like a werewolf. And then I met several of those people. And then I met several more of them. And now I'm still just, I don't know, man, writing about werewolves.
It's all right. We're all friends here. You can be excited and introspective, and let's all just have fun. It's fine.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you for going on this journey with me.
Yeah, Tressa's great at those journeys. I don't know. So what other stories can you tell us about? Tell us about some more encounters that you have read about or taken an interest in.
Yeah. There's a really interesting one I kind of touched on a second ago out of Texas, called the Vider werewolf. And there's been some chatter recently that one's been fully debunked. I'm not sure about that yet. That's questionable.
We don't need to hear about that part. Let's hear the story.
Let's just tell the story. That's more fun. The story, and it was reported by newspapers, and there was law enforcement on the scene. A law enforcement officer actually saw this thing, but this creature was showing up at these people's property, little town called Vider, Texas, very close to the Louisiana border, right near Beaumont, if anyone's familiar with that part of the country. But this thing was showing up. It had killed a couple of their dogs. It was scratching and leaving cut marks in the window screens outside their house. And one night, a gentleman who lived there, a man named Bobby Bussinger, him and his wife Becky, he took his shotgun off the wall, stepped outside, and shot this thing. And it kept coming. It didn't stop. So then he called the police. The police showed up. That's when the law enforcement officer witnessed it. And then the newspapers were on the scene pretty much the next day. So that's a super fun story because it's kind of, again, like, oh, this could be an animal that was territorial and it was trying to run you off the land. But why didn't it die when you shot it?
And that's not the only.
And a cop saw it. And it's in the newspapers. The Orange Leader, I believe, was the newspaper that it was in. You can find it online if you go looking through some of those newspaper archives. And the house is still there to this day. I didn't publish the address in the book, but I was able to find it by doing some digging, and I looked it up on Google Maps, and there's the house. The tree line is exactly where the newspaper article describes it. The way the story plays out, you can very much see it happening the way that it's described in the article because the land just lends itself to that. So that was a fun one because it's close to home for me. It's in the newspapers. I was able to follow up on it. That's a cool
what
one.
was the address of that place? And what is your
I don't even remember.
Okay.
I don't even remember.
Do you have it listed on Airbnb?
I don't think it is listed. It might be.
Pop on down there. Pop on down to Texas. Check this out.
Yeah. I was afraid if I did that, people might drive up and take pictures of the house. And
that's why
absolutely
it's hilarious for me to get you to tell the address because what is your my?
Yeah, I have it somewhere. It's in my original notes. I don't know.
Man, don't give it to Tressa. We'll be taking a road trip.
It's Tressa, but thank you.
No, I forgot the R.
You did.
I gave it a shot.
It's fine. We just met. It's fine.
It's fine. It's fine. Well, I could have come up with another question, but Tressa just pointed out my embarrassing little stumble over her name. So,
Jeni,
go ahead, Tressa.
Listen, I think Jeni wants to ask you about Ape Cat because we were just in Ape Cat country in Oregon.
Oh, I don't know about Ape
Cat.
Cat.
Boy, let us take you on an adventure.
This is
we're not going to do that, cool but thing. Basically,
no, we're not.
What's the gorge's name?
Columbia River Gorge.
It's a Black Panther with the face of an ape.
Ooh, I like this.
Yeah. We got to see where it lives, and it's fantastic and gorgeous, and boy, oh boy. But you don't know about it, so we'll change the subject. Jeni?
Well, I'm going to go look it up.
Yeah, all right. James is the gent who took us around the Columbia River Gorge. He runs his mother-in-law's outdoor store. That's his store now, called Margie's Outdoor Store. And it's a delightful little place. Absolutely adorable. If you are in the Columbia River Gorge, look it up, go see it. It's really cool. So that whole area is just phenomenal anyway. And we talked to him about something called the Klickitat ape cat. And this has been something that has been reported 60s, 70s, I think. So it's fairly recent. And there's a lot of theories about what it could be and where it comes from. But he just gets hundreds of reports about, or he has collected hundreds of reports about this cat that has a face that very much resembles an ape. It's not bipedal. It's walks on all fours and generally is not aggressive towards humans, but just sort of acknowledges and then moves along. But people see this thing all the time, and it's just a massive, massive black cat. Basically kind of resembles an ape. Yep.
I'm have to look
and
into this.
If you look into the history of the area, which we're not going to get into tonight because we're going to talk about that in detail in a later episode, but seriously, look it up because it's all kinds of interesting.
Bananas.
The actual area, the geography of the place,
And what the
which actually kind of brings it up. Like what?
And what the government was there for. And
oh yeah, and what the government was there for. It's
bananas. It's straight bananas. Is what it is.
Yeah. During the Manhattan Project,
You just said we weren't going to talk about it. What are you doing?
We're just going to give a brief overview. During the Manhattan Project, a lot of the plutonium manufactured around that area. So,
so that then you start asking, is this some kind of a mutant?
There it is.
And there was
kind of like the TNT Center.
Animal testing theories.
But
yes.
And this actually made me think of it because I was listening to a couple of episodes of your podcast and I'm not going to say it right, Nagual.
The Nagual.
Nagual came up. And I listened to that episode because we had just done, just heard all about this ape cat. And the thing that struck me was the jaguar. Right? So if you look at jaguars and panthers, they're extraordinary animals, but there have been some indigenous references to some sort of protector spirit animal that takes the shape of a panther or a jaguar.
Interesting. Yeah. I'm going to have to look into that. I'm hearing about this for the first time. This is really cool.
It's really cool. James talks about it a lot. You can go back to that episode. Also, any of our listeners, please go back to that episode and give it a listen again because he's just the coolest, probably one of the smartest dudes that I've met. Very well researched.
Wow, that's rude. We've got a guest right now.
I know, who is also very well researched. Did I say anything bad?
Yeah, you were like,
no.
A lot smarter than this idiot.
Yeah.
That's the card that I held up in the background.
He probably is.
No, but he can talk about it, just as you can.
Yeah,
Dogmen.
That's fascinating.
Any more stories about that you can without giving away the whole documentary before we go?
Yeah, I mean the one that I think a lot of people will be really interested to learn more about is the notorious Land Between the Lakes massacre, and that's a really interesting story because it's kind of superseded the world of cryptozoology and paranormal stuff, and it's really made its way into like the creepypasta clickbait realm. Like if you search LBL massacre, you'll find no fewer than 50 YouTube videos. I just stopped counting after 52. It's all over TikTok, it's all over Instagram, right. It's on Facebook.
You watch one once a week. Oh, get it.
Yeah, yeah. It's all over. And what's fun about it is it really originates with cryptozoology. Barton Nunnally did a documentary in 2007, I believe, called Hunt the Dogman, High Strangeness in Kentucky. And that's where the story kind of originates with a witness named Jan Thompson, I believe her name was. She's passed away now, but she was a gas station clerk near the Land Between the Lakes around the time this is supposed to have taken place. The story is that a family of 4 were camping in their RV in a new campground in the LBL, and they were killed by one, or in some versions, 2 of these Dogman creatures. And even being what I guess you could classify as a Dogman researcher, I wrote this story off for a very long time because it's a creepypasta. It's an urban legend. It's Polybius. It's Bloody Mary, right? It has to be. But then you get out there, the Land Between the Lakes, and you talk to people who have lived out there for a very long time. And they've been hearing this story since well before the internet. The earliest we could trace it was 1982, which is when it's said to have taken place. So it's kind of one of those things. Like, yeah, it could just be a crazy story that got out of control when the internet got a hold of it, but it's been around a lot longer than the internet. And then it correlates to all these modern Dogman encounters. It correlates to mid-century reports. It correlates to other Dogman encounters and reports we hear about them being aggressive, hanging out near campgrounds. So that was kind of not the I guess kind of the main thing we dug into in Dogman territory. It's an overview of the Dogman phenomena in the Land Between the Lakes, but we spent a not insignificant amount of time on that case. So
wait, were you able to find a record of those people existing before they were killed?
No, that's part of the problem.
Yeah, that's
part of the problem. Yeah. And there's a person who has come forward in the last couple of years who claims to be a witness and a survivor of that event. We were able to talk to him for the movie, and I was able to interview him for the book as well. So that mixes up the story a little bit. There are a lot of polarizing thoughts on his encounter, or his account rather. But it's a very, very interesting story that I went in thinking there's no way there's any truth to this. And I came away thinking, okay, I'm pretty sure something happened here to give rise to this. It wasn't nothing.
Yeah, that's absolutely wild. Just kind of like we were talking about earlier, just not hearing much about the Dogmen, and then all of a sudden you hear some more information, and then you're kind of wildly fascinated.
Yeah, yeah. Anything pre-internet, if we can trace something to pre-internet, that doesn't verify it, that doesn't prove it, but it holds a little more water with me at that point, because the internet is where we all live now. We all know how it is.
Yeah. There's something to be said for the longevity of the story, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, we got to wrap this up. Please tell us all the things that you want to promote right now.
Yeah, well, definitely follow Small Town Monsters on any of your social media platforms. We're on all of them. I know that because I'm the one that updates them. Dogman Territory just came out today. You can stream that on Amazon. You can order a physical copy from smalltownmonsters.com. We're also regularly airing episodic YouTube content on UFO, Bigfoot, all kinds of fun stuff. UFOs, I said that in the singular. UFOs, Bigfoot, all kinds of cool stuff over at the Small Town Monsters YouTube channel. And then you can follow me at hey_strangeness on Instagram, or you can email me, Aaron@smalltownmonsters.com.
Thank you so much for joining us. This has been a pleasure.
Thank you. Been looking forward to this. Thank you.
Very much so. Please go check out his stuff, because I really enjoy them as well. It's good stuff.
She's speechless.
Fun stuff.
Everybody else, I don't have my notes because I'm on my laptop, but rate, subscribe, and all of our stuff. We miss you and love you. Thank you for coming back. That's what I usually say, right?
That's, yes.
Until next time, shut up, Jeni. Thank you for joining us at the lounge, or whatever I usually say. Goodbye. Thank you. Shut up. Shut up, Jeni.
Nope.
Shut up.
Nope.